So, I know it's around Christmas time, and I know many of you are expecting a certain type of review I do around this year, but if you didn't see the community post, well, let's just say there is a first time for everything, right? And I know it's funny. I say this as I watch several specials that I haven't watched like ever for Christmas. Like I just watched the Garfield special not long ago while playing some Jack 2. And now in between takes of this, I'm watching the Arthur Perfect Christmas special. Cuz yes, despite being a big fan of that show, I've never watched the Christmas special until now. And I know what you're thinking. Going back on it now, even though you're almost 30, hey, there's a first time for everything, and that show will always hold a special place in my heart. Much like many of the winter-themed games that I've reviewed over the years. And speaking of first time for everything, like I said, if you read the community post, this is the first year that I will not be doing a winter-themed Red Ribbon Reviewers tie-in. I've already explained in the community post, and I'm not going into further details about it here. Sorry to anyone who was, but to give you a little makeup sort of thing, I'm going to do a bit of something different and do a fireside chat sort of thing. This will be pretty much unscripted, which I don't really do many other unscripted videos anyways, aside from my year-end recaps, and even then I have an idea of what I'm going to say about what. But here, unscripted to hell, and I'm just going to do, well, the video is probably going to be titled Random SSX Memories, and yeah. So I don't know if this is going to be broken up into parts or all one thing. I guess it just depends on how long things are going to go. We'll see how I'm feeling, and I'll see when everything's tallied up. But I'm mainly going to be focusing on the big trilogy of games, at least, hopefully, that I have actually played. Like, even though I have reviewed every SSX game in the series, I have memories of certain other ones that I am more fond of compared to others. Like, I didn't play the original game at launch because I didn't get my PS2 until after when I was wee young, and it was not one of the first games I had. And 2012, even though I do remember looking at that at a gaming magazine years ago, like before it came out, when it was under the name Deadly Descents, I did not play it until I reviewed it, so yeah, I cannot speak really for that one proper, or the original. But Tricky, 3, On Tour, and unfortunately Blur, I do have fond memories of those. Well, not so fond memories in the case of Blur, but why don't I go ahead and just start with discussion of Tricky, and you're just going to see various gameplay of them as I go through them. So, yeah, it'll just switch over when I'm done talking with one and on the other. So, starting with SSX Tricky, I do remember that this was probably the first one I actually played in the franchise. And I remember still, I believe I probably picked it up at Target more than likely when I was a young kid. Like, and I still remember in the car driving home and just holding it like in my hands, like, and just admiring it. Though this was after it became a greatest hits copy, because it launched in 2001 November on the PlayStation 2 and also on the GameCube. It was like a very early like window GameCube game, not full on launch I believe, but close to it. And same thing with the original Xbox, so it took like I think almost a month for it to launch on that in North America, and it took longer for the others, though ironically the European GameCube and Xbox ports didn't hit until summer of 2002. And I remember looking at it, and the thing just looked so cool here. Like, I didn't even know what to expect until I first, like, popped in the game into my actual console. And when I did, and I saw that intro, my mind was blown. Like, the remix of Run DMC's It's Tricky, combined with all the characters that have these crazy over-the-top personalities, which I think was definitely something that EA Sports big games especially thrived on, whether they were fictional or based on real people. Like in the case of many of the characters of Freak Style, who are based on actual real motocross riders, Or in the case of the Def Jam games, which had actual rappers and even actual people, like, were heavily modeled after their likenesses and basically characters of themselves in a way, but in different situations. Or even like full-on fictional ones like here. Though I will say for that, in the case of Tricky, I do feel like these celebrities actually do add to the game here, like the voices at least, which I know nowadays people tend to drag on for actual celebrity like voice actors like and stuff when they wish people would use actual real actors. I know, trust me, I've seen about every damn argument. And believe me, when you have freaking Chris Pratt sounding like Billy Crystal in the Mario film, yeah, I guess I can kind of see what you mean. Okay, but that's beside the point. Anyways, but I will say in the case of Tricky, I think they really actually managed to do it right. And I will always point to this game as a prime example of, like, celebrity voice acting in general, like, but I was actually done right. Like, here and a lot of Pixar films always seem to do it right as well. But Tricky was especially a big deal when it did this because genuinely it was one of the first video games, like major video games, to have like a big cast that was mostly consisting of major like celebrities at the time. I know there were deals with other like people early on in games, like Blasto on the PS1, I believe, where the main character was actually voiced by the late Phil Hartman. And yeah, that was kind of a big deal when that came out as well, because, you know, he was a very talented actor, comedian, voice actor as well, and everything. And he did have voice acting experience on The Simpsons. But in a way, eventually, though, like this one, that was just like one person in a game. Usually you would have skilled voice actors doing the job, and I always point them out. You'll notice in my reviews, I do tend to put a lot of emphasis on voice acting, because I do believe that these are the people who bring the stories from script to the actual game with their voices. And if their performances can't capture you, then you're lost. Fortunately, every voice actor that they got for the role was actually very much on point, actually, here. And there was like a couple people who reprised their roles from the previous game, actually. The original SSX, mainly I believe Ryan Wall, who was like the voice of Mac. He also reprised his role. And yeah, he did it up to SSX 3. And then Yuko Nagashima, who was actually also before this and around this time. The other big role I would say here that she did actually was the Japanese voice of Tina Armstrong in Dead or Alive. Although she did have a whole bunch of other roles and other things as well in other games. Yeah. But beyond that, when you look at the rest of the cast, it's like a crazy who's who ordeal. Or not quite who's who, but it's like you could think they actually got these people to do this here. Like, read this cast here. I mentioned some of the actors in the review, but this is the full celebrity cast, also excluding some others like Nick Malaparaman, who was just like an EA employee who happened to voice Moby Jones. But look at this main cast. David Arquette, Macy Gray, Lucy Liu, Biff Naked, Oliver Platt, Jim Rose, Patricia Velasquez, and Billy Zane. Like, that was a pretty big deal back in the day, especially because some of these people were in big, big films. Like David Arquette, he was in the Scream films, obviously, and at the time, Ready to Rumble, which, funny enough, this game reunited him with his co-star of Ready to Rumble, Oliver Platt. Although it's a film I'm pretty sure, I don't know, maybe you forget? I don't know. I did once see somebody sell an autographed copy of Ready to Rumble with David Arquette's signature, and it had the famous line, "Wrestling's not fake," where his voice cracks. Yeah, but it's crazy that those two were brought back, because like I said, David Arquette was in Scream, Lucy Liu was in Charlie's Angels 2000, which was like a huge deal. And it's kind of funny as well, because there's the in-game biographies where people have like their own like listings of stuff as well, and favorite movie. under the character of Elise Riggs, favorite movie listed is Charlie's Angels, which I'm pretty sure was done on purpose because they specifically got Lucy Liu to do the voice, which, again, you wouldn't even realize it's her because one of the things with celebrity voice casting is like acting is that sometimes they'll just use their normal voice, but some of them really actually distinguish it too. Like, many of them here actually did such a good job, and in the case of certain characters, they just were tailored to them, actually. Like, in the case of, like, Sia, like, they were very much probably had someone similar to Macy Gray in mind, actually, and she was more of a singer, but of course, she's been in a lot of other films, if I could actually find it. Of course, she was actually the performer before Things Go to Hell in the World Festival in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. She was also in Training Day and a bunch of other films. Of course, her debut album, On How Life Is, with I Try, which was a huge hit. And another fact is that she sang the theme to As Told by Ginger, which is an underrated tune. But yeah, like her in particular, they really tailored it to her so well. And same thing with Biff Naked as Zoe Payne, and she was like a popular punk, like, I guess punk rocker chick, if you will, and Canadian as well. So yeah, and because they did this in Canada, so they were probably able to get there easily, and some other Canadian talent as well were applicable, which probably explains as well how they got Kathleen Barr to do the voice of the front end, which it's crazy because Dot Matrix, like I said, was probably one of her other famous roles at that point in time. So, like, it was like a perfect fit to have her as the North American front end. Although at that point as well, aside from that, she probably would have also been best known for Ed, Edd n Eddy, as well Kevin and Marie Kanker, and well, Wheezy on Dragon Tales, which I know some of you probably already knew, but the rest of you, I just blew your fucking minds. I know, I have a way of doing that. But some of the other ones I want to mention, like, as well, another one, like Patricia Velasquez, who was Anek Sunamun in the first two Brendan Fraser Mummy films. Again, it seems like they tailored Marisol towards her. And Jim Rose as well, who, like, had his own thing going on as well in the Jim Rose circus. So they kind of basically tailored it to him, considering Simon, who was a brand new character in Tricky, was basically like a sideshow act in a circus, and it kind of fit in right there with him. The only other one that they made completely different in a way, actually, who doesn't really have much in common with, was Oliver Platt as Luther, who of course was in, aside from being in the Not Good Ready to Rumble, he's actually been in like a lot of other films as well. Like, he's always more of like a supporting actor, but you wouldn't realize it because he's always still there, and he's always usually a pretty good part in whatever. Like, he's been in, let's see, Working Girl, Casanova, Time to Kill. I know he was in Executive Decision, I believe. I can probably pull up Letterboxd. See, I can tell you I'm unscripted. But yeah, the point I'm even mentioning with all of this is that this was actually a big deal to have a cast like this in a game like this. I'm guessing also because of the turn of the new millennium and the technology, they really wanted to take advantage of a lot of the newer capabilities, and they could have more voice clips and stuff. And they decided that this was probably the best way as well to do so, was to have such a celebrity sat cast. But really, I'm actually glad they did, because it paid off. And you could actually tell how much they even care too, because one of the cool things about Tricky is the behind the scenes footage. Like, if you have at least the Xbox or PlayStation 2 version, because the GameCube version was limited because of the storage, you can actually find a lot of the behind the scenes, like making of stuff on the disc. And it's so crazy as well, because like, it's a big ass documentary as well, and there's just so much like behind it, like introductions, stuff about the tricks, things about the music and audio, which played a big deal. the characters themselves, and all the voices. Oh shit, I forgot. There's even one more to back. My bad. Turns out there was actually another one I forgot to mention. The last one on the big list of celebrity voice actors. And this Billy Zane was probably best known for being in Titanic at the time, and being in the surprisingly so bad it's good cultish film, The Phantom. And of course he voiced Brody, the Zen surfer guy as well, which, again, they definitely seem to have some tailored to them in mind actually as well. And I believe actually here they even did mention that in the bit, like especially when they made the character like of Eddie as well, like definitely tailored to David Arquette. And it's crazy that they got his involvement too as I look at this behind the scenes footage, because he was actually a big fan of the original game. And so I guessing they heard that and they wanted to get him involved. And so they crafted the character, but he was always more of a Mac main with the original. So yeah, kind of just a little interesting fact there. But yeah, and they actually, with the exception of Lucy Liu, who I'm guessing was probably busy, considering she was still on Ally McBeal, which was still on the air at the time this game came out. And to be fair, other stuff as well, because yeah, she's done a lot in Hollywood. They only have her doing like voiceover, like recording, like, or you just hear her voice. You don't actually see her on camera doing any of the voice work like you do with literally everyone else in the game. But yeah, I think also seeing that behind the scenes footage is one of the various different things that kind of, you know, encouraged me to just look at game development, probably because like when you see a lot of this here, it's so mind-blowing to see how everything came together. And like this was kind of my first introduction, I guess, to seeing like the magic behind making games, and it's always stuck with me since, because it shows you a lot of care goes into it on many different parts. It's a team effort, but in the end, ultimately, I do think it definitely pursued me to go to the degree that I did. So yeah. So beyond the behind-the-scenes stuff, playing the actual game itself, like, was also quite the experience. I know I rambled a bit there, but like I said, it's unscripted, so it is what it is. Beyond that, though, once I actually started playing the game, my mind was even further blown. Unfortunately, I didn't get very far in it because I did not have a PS2 memory card for many, many years, until like the mid-2000s, so yeah. So, I would just usually end up doing the Garibaldi and Snow Dream and Elysium Alps over and over. Well, mostly the first two, because after that, that's when the game's difficulty starts to ramp up. Beyond that, though, I will say, like, I still did enjoy it quite a bit in the end. Like, just seeing how easy it was to pull off tricks, that blew my mind. Seeing, like, the way the game just oozed its style, how great, like, everything looked. I've gushed on about the game in my original review, which is so almost 10 years old. I almost kind of want to go back and remake it because I feel like I can do more detail and give this game proper justice and maybe give it that perfect 5 out of 5, because the more I actually play it, the more I just enjoy it. I mean, if you're trying to 100% it, though, I'll say right now it can be a bit tedious. But if you just go in here, do what you gotta do, and go back and revisit it occasionally, you'll probably still won't tire yourself out too much with the game. But yeah, beyond that as well, it's just, there really wasn't anything quite like the SSX games, at least in the style that they were done. Because beyond this, up to this point with snowboarding games, you had like the Cool Border series on PlayStation and the Snowboard Kids games on the Nintendo 64. But SSX was like a whole other beast. But Tricky, like I said in my review, I think, for the original game, I think Tricky set the bar so high that going back to the original first, like after playing Tricky so much, yeah. And I think another thing as well about it that was interesting to me when I look back at it here is just that the game itself also... Oh, geez, I'm trying to remember here. Yes, what I get. And I guess also another thing as well is just the game really had this oomph style that really lived up to the EA Sports big label. And I think also that's another one of those things that really helps make it so memorable to go back to. Like, the second you play it, you're instantly back in time. A better time in life for some of us, I guess. But really, I mean, can you blame it, really? And the fact that also I think what really helps is that the game is just still fun to play all these years later. Like, the more I go back to it, the more I realize this still controls very well. Like I said, you got more, like, maneuverability, like, in the original review, like I mentioned for SSX here, like, that you didn't have as much maneuverability there as you did compared to Tricky, which opened up the pipeline for so much more as well. Like, and that really made like a world of difference. It's always like the little things I felt that made such a huge difference in the gameplay. And beyond that, I did actually end up playing it though, like on the other platforms around the time, because like my gaming history here, and it was so bizarre, because like I had the PS2 version, Greatest Hits, but unfortunately did the trade-in thing later, which piece of advice, don't do it. It's not worth it. Luckily, I've gotten a good chunk of that stuff back here, except maybe some bad shovelware that I probably have forgotten already, but for goodness sake, just don't. Treasure those as well, because you never know. Yeah, but beyond that, though, I didn't have it just on the PlayStation 2, and I did get it back through a Black Label copy, which I still have, but I still have my original GameCube childhood copy that I showed in the 2012 review. And I even rented the Xbox version from Blockbuster years ago in the mid-2000s, because close to my side of town, or on the northwest side of town, I mean, not where I am now, but when I was living on the northwest side of H-Town, there was a, not far from my school, actually, like further down the street from my middle school, there was like a shopping center that had like a Food Town grocery store. But in that same lot at one point was a Blockbuster, and I remember renting a lot of games there. Corvette, Flat Out 2, Battlefront 2, Hot Wheels Stunt Track Challenge, and well, SSX Tricky was one of them. So it has one of the few distinctions of being one of the few 6th-gen games where I've played every version of it. And I think I'll close it out with this here, because we're closing in on a little over 20 minutes. And I don't want to keep just rambling on forever, even though I could. I'll say this about each version. The Xbox version definitely looks the best. I'll say that much about it. But the controller stuff was a lot more difficult to deal with. Yeah, it is what it is, though. But, like, it's because the PlayStation 2 controller was just so good with all 4 shoulder buttons. Like, you can really tell they just designed it with the shoulder buttons in mind on the PS2. I mean, that's how they did with the original, so yeah. And the GameCube version only had, like, 3 shoulder buttons. So, yeah, a little bit more to adapt. Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad, seemingly, but you don't have the behind-the-scenes content on the GameCube version. And, yeah, that kind of sucks. At least all of it there. But you do on the PS2 and Xbox, because those are actual full DVDs and not mini discs. And, yeah, I'll say that. PS2 version does control the best, like I said in the original review. The GameCube version is a slight step up, but the controls are probably the worst. And the Xbox version looks the best, but also kind of harder when it comes to tricks, especially when you want to do things like show off and stuff. And it's probably also when you're trying to do the trick book thing as well, because, well, that's a big deal. The trick book completing chapters will unlock outfits, and yeah. But yeah, I just do have fond memories of playing this game so much in the 2000s. Like, it was one of those that really helped out, because things weren't always easy with my life here. There's been ups and downs, and truth be told, that was one of those games I have the fondest memories of. And going back to it still kind of helps. Well, things seemed more better, you know, when you're younger and all. Yeah, what can I say? But yeah, Tricky was fun. I want to get an Xbox copy. I almost bought one at Retropalooza Houston. I think it was this year, I believe, but I had someone else really wanted, and I thought, well, you know what? There's something else that I need to get on the Xbox here, which was Azaric, and I already have it for the PS2 and the GameCube, so it's not like I really need another copy, so I passed on it. Let the guy who was also eyeing it get it. Now, that was last year, actually. Though I do eventually want to get another Xbox copy of Tricky, just so I can have all 3 versions of it, because really, I think it's just, it probably is one of my all-time favorite games. Like, I would probably put it in, like, my top, like, 50 or even, like, 20 games of all time, undoubtedly. It's that damn good, and yeah, this little rambling of various different things related to it, the cast and everything, just some other random assorted ramblings. Yeah, I think we've gone on long enough. This probably is going to make one decent video by itself if you just want to hear some guy rambling about one of his favorite childhood video games. I might do the others for SSX 3 and on tour maybe, and maybe Blur depending on whatever, but I don't know. That's it. I don't really have much else to say other than Merry Christmas. Yeah, happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus. Happy Hearts-Warming Eve to my favorite ship couple. Shoot, I can't even say that right. And I know what you're thinking. That show's been off the air for 5 years. Why do you still say it? Hey, I've started the tradition after everything happened the year it ended. Why should I stop now? But yeah, happy whatever the heck you celebrate. Happy Hearts-Warming Eve to my favorite ship, and we'll see what the hell else happens next.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff, and check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.